June 6, 1985. A cemetery outside Sao Paulo, Brazil. 6 investigators standing over a grave that should not exist. The headstone reads, Wolfgang Gerhard, date of death, February 7, 1979. But the forensic team is not looking for Wolfgang Gerhard. They are looking for Josef Mengele, the angel of death, the man who turned Auschwitz into his personal laboratory, the most hunted Nazi war criminal in history. And here's the part that keeps historians awake at night. They found him. Or did they? Because when they opened that grave, what came out was not just a body. It was a question that has never been fully answered. The bones matched. The dental records lined up. 7 years later, DNA tests confirmed it. Josef Mengele, dead at 67, drowned in the ocean, buried under a false name in a country that never asked questions. Case closed. Monster dead. Justice. Incomplete, but done. Except the body had been in tropical soil for 7 years before anyone looked. Except the DNA technology in 1992 was primitive. Except the only family member who provided DNA was his son, the same son who had every reason to want the search to end. And except for one detail nobody talks about. A fugitive like Mengele does not survive for 34 years on luck. He survives because someone builds the road, someone opens the doors, someone moves the money, someone keeps the secret, which means between 1945 and 1979, there was a network, not a conspiracy theory, a network with routes, safe houses, false documents, and enough money to keep a war criminal comfortable in 3 different countries. Some call it ODESSA, some say that is a myth, but the pattern is real. The Vatican knew, the CIA knew, and the Mengele family back in Germany, running one of the most successful companies in Bavaria, they definitely knew. So before we talk about the body in Brazil, we need to talk about how he got there, because that story involves priests, intelligence agencies, Swiss bank accounts, and a little German town that stayed silent for 40 years. Real quick, if deep dives into history's darkest mysteries are your thing, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. This story has 5 parts, and it only gets stranger. Alright, back to 1945. Because that is where the escape begins. Not with a dramatic chase, but with paperwork, a priest, and a one-way ticket to Argentina. April 1945. The Third Reich collapses. Allied forces sweep through Germany, rounding up Nazi officials, gathering evidence, preparing for trials. Josef Mengele is captured by American troops. As a regular Wehrmacht soldier, they check his papers, they process him, they let him go. Because he is not wearing his SS uniform. Because his blood type tattoo, the one every SS member had under their left arm, has been burned off. Because he gives them a fake name, and they believe him. That is mistake number 1. But it will not be the last. For the next 4 years, Mengele lives in Bavaria under the name Fritz Hollmann. He works on a farm, he keeps his head down, and he waits. He is not waiting alone. All across Europe, thousands of Nazi war criminals are realizing the same thing. Trials are coming, evidence is mounting, and if they stay, they hang. So they run. But running requires logistics. You cannot just buy a plane ticket to Argentina when your face is on wanted posters. You need papers. You need money. You need someone to vouch for you. Enter the ratlines. Not a conspiracy theory. An actual system. Secret routes designed to move people out of Europe and into countries that asked fewer questions. The primary destinations? Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Syria. And the routes all had one thing in common. They ran through Rome. Here is where the story gets uncomfortable. Because the Catholic Church was not just aware of the ratlines, certain officials actively ran them. Bishop Alois Hudal, rector of the German Church in Rome, a man who openly wrote, "I thank God that he allowed me to help thousands of innocent people." Innocent. That was his word for Nazi fugitives. Father Krunoslav Draganovic, a Croatian priest operating out of San Girolamo Monastery, United States Army intelligence documents, declassified decades later, confirm he helped over 30,000 people escape. Germans, Croatians, Austrians. Many of them war criminals. Why would priests do this? The official answer: humanitarian aid for refugees, fleeing communist persecution. The real answer: anti-communism. The Church saw the Soviet Union as the greater threat. Former Nazis, in their calculation, were useful allies in the Cold War. Morality took a back seat to politics. And the system was elegant. The Red Cross, trying to help genuine refugees, issued travel documents to stateless persons. All you needed was a witness to confirm your identity. A priest could do that. A priest could say, "Yes, I know this man. His name is Helmut Gregor," which is exactly the name Josef Mengele used when he walked into a Red Cross office in 1949, received a passport, and boarded a ship in Genoa bound for Buenos Aires. July 1949. Josef Mengele steps off a ship in Buenos Aires and does something almost unbelievable. He uses his real name, not everywhere, not on official documents. But within the German expat community in Argentina, he is Josef Mengele. He attends parties. He works in pharmaceutical sales for a family-connected business called Fadro Farm. He lives openly enough that people know exactly who he is. Because in 1950s, Argentina, under Juan Perón, being a former Nazi is not a liability. It is barely even a secret. But here is the question nobody asked loudly enough at the time. How does a fugitive on the run afford a comfortable middle-class life in a foreign country? The answer is Günzburg, a small Bavarian town, population 20,000, home to one of Germany's most successful agricultural machinery companies, Karl Mengele and Sons, Joseph's family business. And business is booming. While the rest of Europe rebuilds from rubble, Germany's economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder, turns companies like Mengele and Sons into powerhouses. By the 1960s, they have over 200 employees, millions in revenue, exports across the globe. Josef Mengele is still a shareholder. Estimates suggest he received between $100,000 and $300,000 over the years. In today's money, that is $1 to $3 million, funneled through intermediaries, carried by couriers, deposited into Swiss bank accounts where numbered anonymity asks no questions. One of those couriers has a name, Hans Sedlmayr, childhood friend of Joseph, employee of the family company. He visits South America multiple times, brings cash, brings letters, brings medicine. He is never prosecuted. Back in Günzburg, the Mengele family lives a double existence. Publicly, they are respectable business owners. Privately, they are managing a fugitive's lifeline. When investigators come asking questions in the 1960s, the family says they do not know where Joseph is. The whole town backs them up, because the Mengeles are the largest employer in Günzburg. You do not bite the hand that feeds you. This is not speculation. This is pattern. Money moves. Letters arrive. A man who should be starving and hiding is instead living comfortably enough to buy property in Paraguay in 1959. Then in 1960, everything shifts. Israeli agents capture Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires. The world watches as he is smuggled to Jerusalem, tried, and hanged. Suddenly, Argentina is not safe anymore. Mengele panics. He flees to Paraguay, then Brazil, and the network has to adapt. Because now, the hunt is serious. Mossad is involved, Simon Wiesenthal is closing in, and yet Mengele stays ahead. How? Because someone always knows where he is. Someone always makes sure he has what he needs. And someone always decides that protecting the family name matters more than turning him in. That someone, eventually, is his own son. Rolf Mengele grows up believing his father died in the war. That is the story his mother tells him. That is what he tells his classmates when they ask why his last name sounds familiar. That is the lie he lives inside until he is 16 years old. Then the family sits him down and tells him the truth. Your father is alive. He is in South America. You can never tell anyone. Ever. Imagine that conversation. Imagine being a teenager and realizing your entire childhood was built on a script. Imagine learning that the most wanted man on earth shares your DNA, and now you are part of the cover-up whether you chose to be or not. Rolf keeps the secret. For years, he finishes school. He becomes a lawyer. He gets married. He builds a normal life on top of an abnormal foundation. But the question burns. Who is this man? Not the monster in the history books, the actual human being. My father. So, in 1977, Rolf makes a decision that will haunt him forever. He travels 6,000 miles to Brazil to meet Josef Mengele face to face. They spend days together. In a small house in the countryside, an old man living under the name Peter Hochbichler, paranoid, isolated, far from the wealthy fugitive Rolf might have imagined. And Rolf asks the questions anyone would ask. Why did you do it? Do you feel remorse? Did you know what you were doing? Josef's answers are worse than denial. They are justifications. He claims he never killed anyone personally. He was following orders. He was conducting medical research. He insists he did nothing wrong. No apology. No shame. Just rationalizations from a man who spent 30 years convincing himself he was misunderstood. Rolf leaves Brazil with nothing resolved. No catharsis. No closure. Just the sickening realization that his father is not conflicted or regretful. He is simply empty. But here is the choice that defines everything. Rolf does not turn him in. He knows where Josef is. He could call the authorities. He could end the hunt. Justice could finally happen. But he does not. Why? Maybe because exposing his father means destroying what is left of his family. Maybe because he is psychologically trapped by years of secrecy. Maybe because turning in your own father, even a monster, is a line most people cannot cross. Or maybe because Josef is already dying. Old, weak, irrelevant. Capturing him will not bring back the dead. It will only drag Rolf into a media circus that never ends. 2 years later, Josef Mengele suffers a stroke while swimming and drowns. Rolf stays silent for 6 more years before the truth comes out. February 7th, 1979. A beach in Bertioga, Brazil. Josef Mengele goes for a swim and never comes back. Stroke, heart attack, drowning. The exact cause does not really matter. He is dead at 67, buried quietly under the name Wolfgang Gerhard, and the world keeps searching. For 6 more years, Nazi hunters follow leads, investigators chase rumors, survivors demand answers. Nobody knows the monster is already in the ground. Then in 1985, the Austrian couple who buried him, Wolfgang and Lieslot Bossert, finally break their silence. They tell authorities where to dig. The grave is opened. Forensic experts examine the remains. Dental records match. Skull measurements align. In 1992, DNA testing confirms it with blood from Rolf. Josef Mengele is dead. Case closed. Except some people do not buy it. Think about the timeline. Mengele dies in 79. The body sits in tropical heat and humidity for 7 years before anyone exhumes it. Decomposition in those conditions is severe. Bone integrity degrades. Tissue is long gone. DNA technology in 1992 is primitive compared to what we have now. And the only genetic comparison comes from Rolf, the son who had every incentive to end the decades-long nightmare hanging over his family. Could the Bosserts have planted a different body? Could the Mengele family have orchestrated one final deception? Most historians say no. The forensic evidence is solid enough. But that 1% of doubt? That is what conspiracy theories live on. And then there is Candido Godoy, a small town in southern Brazil with an unusually high rate of twin births. 10% of pregnancies compared to the global average of 1%. Mengele visited that area in the 1960s. Locals remember a German doctor asking questions about genetics. Some residents insist he conducted experiments. Scientists reject the connection. They attribute the twin rate to a genetic founder effect in the isolated population. But the rumor persists because it fits the narrative. The angel of death never stopped experimenting. Here is what we know for certain. Mengele escaped justice. He lived comfortably for decades, thanks to a network of enablers. The Vatican helped build the roads. The CIA knew and did nothing. His family funded his survival. His son protected him even after meeting him face to face. And in the end, no trial, no accountability, just a grave with the wrong name and a footnote in history. Rolf Mengele died in 2022, at 78 years old. He gave only a handful of interviews in his life. In one, he said, "I loathe the idea that I carry his genes." His children, Josef Mengele's grandchildren, are alive today. They have changed their names. They live private lives. They have never spoken publicly. The Mengele company still exists. It rebranded. It sold off shares. But it still operates in Günzburg, the same Bavarian town that protected the family for half a century. And Günzburg itself? No memorial, no acknowledgement, no reckoning with the past, just silence. Maybe that is the real legacy. Not the body in Brazil, not the DNA tests, but the silence that surrounded Josef Mengele from the moment he stepped off that ship in Argentina until the day investigators opened his grave. Because here is the thing about monsters. They do not survive alone. They survive because ordinary people make ordinary choices. To look away, to stay quiet, to prioritize comfort over conscience. If this kind of deep dive into the uncomfortable corners of history is something you want more of, subscribe and hit the bell. Drop a comment if you think Rolf made the right call, or if you would have done something different. I read all of them. Thanks for watching.